My parents handed over control of our family restaurant to my brother-in-law under pressure from my sister. But now everyone's looking for new jobs because his fresh ideas are starting to stink. Our family owns a small Italian restaurant that's been running for over 20 years. My parents started it when I was 9, and I've worked there in some capacity since I was 16. At first, my parents let me work weekends as a helper, clearing tables, sweeping floors, and assisting with basic kitchen prep. As I got older, I took on more hours and learned to take customer orders. After graduating high school, instead of going straight to college, I decided to work full-time at the restaurant to support my parents. I worked every role in the place, starting in the kitchen, where I learned to make our pasta sauces from my mom's recipes. Over the years, I mastered preparing appetizers, salads, and desserts, then moved to the main cooking station, learning every dish on the menu. I also worked as a server for 6 months to understand what customers wanted and how to handle tricky situations. My parents taught me to order from suppliers, manage inventory, schedule staff, and handle bookkeeping. When our head chef left 3 years ago, I ran the kitchen for 4 months until we found a replacement. When our manager quit 2 years ago, I took on those duties too. Last year, my parents officially named me general manager and started talking about me taking over the restaurant when they retired. The problem is my older sister and her husband, my brother-in-law. My sister never worked at the restaurant, except for a few weeks in high school when my parents forced her to help out. She hated every minute, complaining about the garlic smell on her clothes and how tired she was after shifts. She went to college and now has her own job. My brother-in-law worked at the restaurant for about 2 years. He was decent at some tasks but couldn't handle much responsibility. He also caused some issues, but we tolerated him because he's family. About 6 months ago, my sister started insisting that my brother-in-law should run the restaurant instead of me. She argued he had experience and a business degree from a community college. She also claimed it wasn't fair for me to be in charge just because I'm the son, when her husband was older and more mature. At first, my parents brushed it off. They knew how hard I'd worked and how much I'd learned about the business. But my sister kept pushing, calling my mom multiple times a week to complain. Things escalated when my brother-in-law started agreeing with her and making his own comments. 2 months ago, during a family meeting at my parents' house, my sister spent an hour listing reasons why her husband should run the restaurant. She said he had fresh ideas that I lacked, which could hurt the business long-term. My brother-in-law nodded along, adding that he'd been thinking about this for months and believed he could boost profits by at least 20% in 6 months. He proposed starting a catering business, adding a lunch buffet and offering cooking classes. 3 weeks ago, my parents caved to the pressure. They called me into the office and said they wanted to try something new. They asked if I'd step back for 3 months and let my brother-in-law act as interim manager, claiming I could use a break and his ideas might help the business grow. I asked if they were serious, and my dad said they thought it was fair to give my brother-in-law a chance to prove himself. I agreed to step back but told them it wouldn't be a break. I was leaving for good and would look for another job. My brother-in-law took over 2 weeks ago, and I've stayed away as promised. But I've been hearing from our servers and kitchen staff, and it's clear he's in over his head. In his first week, he changed our sauce recipes without consulting my mom, cutting the garlic in half for the marinara and meat sauces. 3 customers complained that their food tasted different, and a regular sent her pasta back because it wasn't the same. He also fired our head server Maria, who'd been with us for 5 years. She was professional, great with tough customers, and fluent in Spanish, which helped with our Latino clientele. My brother-in-law let her go because she wasn't enthusiastic enough about his new customer service ideas. He replaced her with someone my sister recommended, who had 0 restaurant experience. Predictably, it's been a disaster. My sister's been at the restaurant almost daily since her husband took over, acting like some sort of consultant, walking around with a notepad and scrutinizing everything. Yesterday, my parents called and asked me to come help because my brother-in-law was struggling with vendor payments. Apparently, he botched this week's food orders and we're running out of key ingredients. They sounded stressed and asked if I could come for just a few hours to fix it. I said no. Now my sister's complaining that I didn't help with the transition, claiming her husband's struggles are my fault because I'm jealous and vengeful. The truth is, my brother-in-law has proven himself utterly incompetent in just 2 weeks, which doesn't surprise me. But it shocked my parents, who genuinely thought his fresh ideas would outshine my experience. I've started job hunting and had a couple of promising interviews. It feels like a breath of fresh air to gain new experiences and step away from the family business. My parents handed it over to someone incompetent, and it's one of the worst business decisions I've ever seen. They think I should come back and help, but that ship has sailed. Update 1. I decided not to help. I've had follow-up interviews for new job opportunities and chose to pursue them. This left my brother-in-law to make more mistakes on his own. Regular customers started complaining more about the food and service quality. He kept changing recipes and procedures without understanding why we did things a certain way. For example, he switched to frozen pizza dough, making our pizzas taste like cardboard, an unforgivable sin for an Italian restaurant. Financially, things got worse by his 4th week. He cut costs on ingredients but wasted money elsewhere. Our food costs rose nearly 30% because he was buying expensive, unnecessary items while running out of staples like flour and cheese. He also forgot to pay the insurance premium, and we got a cancellation notice. His staff management hit a breaking point when he fired 2 more long-term employees: our 4-year veteran cook, Tony, a proud Italian who couldn't tolerate his nonsense, and our reliable weekend server who refused to use his scripted customer greeting. My sister, likely jealous, kept showing up at the restaurant. She convinced my brother-in-law to spend money on fancier menus that weren't needed. Things exploded in his 5th week when we got complaints from the health department. He'd been ignoring standard food safety protocols, and an inspector found violations, including improper food storage temperatures and lack of cleanliness. We received a warning that could have led to a temporary closure if not fixed immediately. That same week, my brother-in-law made a decision that finally forced my parents to act. Without consulting anyone, he booked an expensive catering service for a 150-person wedding reception, promising dishes we'd never made before at a price barely covering food costs. He scheduled it for a Saturday, our busiest day. When my parents learned about the catering disaster 2 days before the event, they panicked and called me to help save our reputation. I declined as I'd already accepted a formal job offer elsewhere. My dad had to step back in full-time to handle it. The catering event went poorly, costing us nearly $1,000 in losses. After the catering fiasco, my parents ended my brother-in-law's trial period. Instead of firing him, which would have been the right move, they asked him to return to his old assistant manager role. He refused, saying he wouldn't accept a demotion after proving he could handle bigger responsibilities. My sister backed him, arguing they hadn't given him enough time to implement his ideas. They both walked out that day and haven't returned, apparently offended. My sister called my mom repeatedly, demanding an apology and insisting her husband deserved another chance. My parents said no, but she's furious and says they'll regret it. My dad's been trying to fix the damage, but I'm not sure he has the expertise. Some employees refuse to return, feeling mistreated by my brother-in-law. Others are ready to join me at my new job, great workers who'd be valuable in my new role. My dad faces the tough task of rebuilding trust with regular customers and restoring the quality of service and food. That's hard when other Italian restaurants are nearby, ready to take our customers after a bad experience. We're talking about losses exceeding $8,000, which is significant given a restaurant's slim profit margins. Another issue came up. Some supplies and equipment never arrived at the restaurant. After calling suppliers, my parents discovered my brother-in-law had been diverting deliveries to a different address. He was using the restaurant's vendor accounts for his own benefit, buying equipment and supplies for a competing catering business he planned to start. The delivery address was a commercial kitchen he'd rented across town. When my dad confronted him, he claimed it was a misunderstanding, saying he was temporarily storing equipment and planned to return it. My sister called my mom the next day, yelling that we were unfairly attacking her husband. She said he was just trying to help the family business by exploring expansion opportunities and accused us of being paranoid and jealous of his success. My parents have been trying to get him to return the stolen equipment, but he's been dodging their calls. My sister texted that he'd return everything once they apologized for mistreating him. She hasn't spoken to me, which is fine. I left to avoid this drama. She keeps defending her husband, refusing to admit he's incompetent, a thief, or both. I'm glad I made the choice I did, otherwise I'd be stuck in this mess. I'm not sure if the restaurant is salvageable as I haven't seen the financials myself, but I can guess it's bad since it was profitable when things were running smoothly. Update 2. About 3 weeks after my last update, my brother-in-law finally returned most of the stolen equipment and supplies, dropping them off at our warehouse when my parents weren't there, with no explanation. Some items were missing and several pieces of equipment were damaged, according to staff. My parents chose not to pursue it further to avoid more family conflict. My sister has cut off contact with our family since the return. She stopped calling my parents and skipped my mom's birthday dinner, which hurt my mom deeply. When they tried calling her, she either didn't answer or hung up immediately. Then my sister started showing up at the restaurant again, not to help or apologize but to cause trouble. One Friday night, our busiest time, she arrived with 3 friends and demanded a table despite all reservations being booked. When the hostess explained they'd have to wait an hour, my sister declared she was the owner's daughter and deserved a table. She loudly complained that the restaurant had gone downhill and the service was better before, making sure other customers could hear. She left without eating but not before creating an awkward scene that ruined other diners' evenings. This pattern continued for weeks. She'd show up during peak hours, nitpicking everything from the dining room temperature to the service speed. She badmouthed the food and told other customers about better restaurants nearby. She also started posting negative reviews online using fake accounts. It got worse when she began contacting regular customers directly, using old reservation lists to call them and spread lies about seeing mice in the kitchen or claiming the health department violations were more serious than reported. These falsehoods led several customers to cancel reservations or stop coming. My parents finally took action when my sister started targeting employees. She called one server and told her the restaurant was failing and she should find another job immediately, claiming it would close in months. The server asked my parents the next day if it was true. They had to reassure her there were no plans to close, though the business was struggling. My sister and her husband then escalated by spreading claims of employee mistreatment and harassment. This was the last straw for my parents, who'd hoped she'd eventually calm down and apologized. My dad called her and banned her from the restaurant, telling her to stop trying to ruin our business. She responded by threatening to sue them for defamation, claiming they'd spread lies about her husband. She demanded a public apology and compensation for his lost business opportunities. My parents consulted a lawyer, who reviewed evidence of my brother-in-law's theft and my sister's sabotage. The lawyer said her threats were baseless and that my parents had grounds to sue her for harassment and intentional interference with business relations. They chose not to sue, though I'm not sure why. Instead, they had the lawyer send a cease and desist letter to my sister and brother-in-law, demanding they stop contacting customers, employees, and suppliers, with a warning of legal action if the harassment continued. The restaurant's still struggling, and it's not just because of my sister. Friends still working there say business is slow, and my dad can't do enough to turn it around. Even if my sister stops, the business might close. I can't gauge how bad it is from the outside, but I know it was profitable when things were running well. It's sad because I poured years into that place. I'm now working at a new non-Italian restaurant and have no plans to return after being pushed out. I'm happy here where family and work don't mix. a combination that's proven toxic for me. Update 3. For about a month after the cease and desist letter, my sister and brother-in-law stayed away and stopped their harassment. The restaurant saw some improvement and I thought it might survive. But a week ago, my parents gathered the staff and announced they'd have to close because it was no longer profitable. An employee told me my parents were in tears, apologizing for not doing enough. I feel bad for the staff, who've suffered the most from my parents, sisters, and brother-in-law's decisions. I've been trying to get them jobs at my new restaurant, but openings are limited. My boss offered to open a new restaurant in a neighboring town, with me as the manager and the chance to hire my own team. It's just a proposal for now, but it feels like the perfect opportunity. I'll discuss it with him after his vacation. Meanwhile, my parents have decided to sue my sister and brother-in-law for defamation and damages and file a theft charge against him. I think they waited too long, and it shows what would have happened if I'd gone back. I'd be stuck in this mess, with my sister sabotaging the business and my parents hesitating to act against their spoiled daughter. Stepping away was the right call. It spared me the drama and dealing with parents who couldn't stand up to her sooner. Update 4. Good news, my employer greenlit the second restaurant, and we're working to open it in a couple of months. I've got a lot of freedom in the project and am collaborating with a contractor to move fast. I've reached out to my parents' former employees, and while some are excited to join, others have found new jobs or can't wait until we open. I'll hire everyone who's still available when we're ready. My parents made the right call by suing my sister and brother-in-law for defamation and damages and filing a theft charge against him. They're hesitant to discuss the lawsuit with me, likely struggling with suing their own daughter. I've told them she showed no remorse for ruining them, so they shouldn't feel pity. But that's my parents, soft-hearted, which is why they're in this mess, both jobless after losing the family business they'd semi-retired from. Update 5. The new restaurant has been open for 8 months and is doing better than expected. My boss is thrilled with the results. For those wondering why I didn't start my own restaurant, it's because I'd rather save my money than take on debt. Anyone in this industry knows how hard it is to run a successful restaurant with a high failure rate. My boss and I are now discussing opening another location as equal partners, splitting the capital investment. I've brought on about 75% of my parents' former staff. It's like old times, but without my parents as owners or anyone with fresh ideas meddling. My parents won their lawsuit, and my sister and brother-in-law must pay $45,000 for defamation, theft, and other damages. My brother-in-law also got probation and a fine for stealing. My sister lost her job after her employers asked her to resign due to the publicized lawsuit. My dad's taken a new job, but my mom's chosen not to work.